I told a friend of mine that I was gonna make a video about how to get your book made into a movie, and he said, wouldn't it be funny if the whole video was like 2 seconds long and it's just you saying, you can't, and then it fades to black? And I'm like, no, that would not be funny at all. That's really dispiriting. But I understand what he was getting at, right? Am I setting up false hopes by making a video about how to get your book into a movie? Because so few books do get made into movies. And on one level, yes, I don't wanna skip over the fact that it is tremendously difficult to get your book made into a movie. But on the other hand, I think following these 5 steps give you the absolute best shot at making sure your story has a chance of getting onto the silver screen. And you also have to understand that there's one step before getting your book made into a movie that can be very good for you. It's called getting it optioned. Listen, a lot of my writer friends get their book optioned. Getting your book optioned means that a studio buys the rights to potentially make your book into a film. It doesn't mean that your book's gonna be made into a film, it means they have the option. Now the sad truth is that most books that get optioned don't make it all the way and get made into movies. But on the other hand, as an author, you're like, well, I'm $5,000 richer or $20,000 richer or $50,000 richer. Even if your book doesn't get made into a movie, it's nice to have that money in your pocket. But if you're like, look, John, an option would be nice, but what I really want is to see my story on the big screen. Okay, here are the 5 steps that will give you the absolute best shot of making that happen, and I'm gonna give you lots of examples of authors who have actually done it. The first step is to publicize. There is no way that studio heads who make the decisions about what movies get made can make your book into a movie if they don't know about your book. And a very easy step to make sure your book has the highest visibility possible is to make sure your book gets reviewed in the trade reviews. These are not reviews that happen once the book comes out, these are the pre-publication reviews. I'm talking about stuff like Publishers Weekly, Kirkus Review, Library Journal, and I suggest these because I know for a fact that agents scour these listings looking for options they can buy up. I've read plenty of interviews with people high up in the film industry who tell me they are constantly scouring the new releases, books that haven't come out yet, looking for new material. Another excellent way of making sure your book gets the type of visibility that leads to a movie deal is making sure you get a highly placed interview. Now, the way you get a high profile interview is by paying a publicist. You cannot go out on your own and contact the type of people who will get you that type of interview. You have to pay someone else who has relationships with people in the industry, a publicist, who can open those doors for you. Now, a lot of my friends who are writers who pay a publicist 5 grand, 10 grand, 20 grand end up saying it wasn't worth it. Why? Because they only got like 4 to 7 interviews out of it. But in a way, paying a publicist is like buying a lottery ticket. You are hoping out of those 4 or 7 really big time interviews that you do that a movie industry exec will end up seeing that and be like, I think we could develop that. Does that happen all the time? No, you're taking a chance, you're taking a shot. Every single way that you publicize your book is just one more chance for the exact right person, the person with the right connections, the person in the movie industry, to look at that and say, I think we should option this. Keep rolling the dice, people. The more often you roll the dice, the better chances you have. The second way you can give your book a better chance of becoming a movie is to write a high concept book. By high concept, I mean creating a book that is easy to make into a movie. For example, having an amazing pitch, a 1-sentence pitch that immediately grabs the attention of your listener and makes them say, oh, I want to read that. And it's equally important to have a really amazing title, right? I've always thought about how amazing a title like The Devil Wears Prada is. That was a 2003 book that got turned into the movie with Meryl Streep and Anne Hathaway. And I guarantee you that that title, such a memorable title, Devil, associating Satan with high profile fashion, Devil Wears Prada. That title had a huge impact in helping that book get made into a movie. Another way you can help your book along the path is to make sure that it is marketable. By marketable, I mean have some element of your book that connects to a famous person or a big historical event. Something that the reader can immediately latch onto and connect with emotionally, or they say, oh, I know something about that situation already. And a fourth way of making sure you have a high concept book is making sure that it has a broad audience. And there are plenty of books out there that are considered unadaptable, or it's extremely difficult to make them into movies. I'm thinking of things like Confederacy of Dunces, which has been a play, but it's never been made into a movie. Or a really famous one is Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian, such a famous book, but no one's made it into a film, even though there's always been rumors for years and years and years. Oh, it's in development. Oh, they're working on it. But it is very difficult to bring to the screen. Another thing about a book that makes it difficult to transition to become a movie is the way that you deal with time. If you are flowing through vast swaths of time, covering months in a paragraph or covering years in quick montages, if you are summarizing a lot of your book, then that's really difficult to make into a movie. Movies tend to love books which are written primarily in scenes. It just makes it much easier to write a screenplay based on that. And I'm not saying it's better to write in summary than the scenes. I'm saying if if your true goal is to make it into a movie, then these are things that can give your book a little edge. 3, sell a lot of copies. Authors come to me all the time and they say, oh, I want my book made into a movie. And I published 2 or 3 years ago and I say, okay, how many copies have you sold? And they're like, oh, 100 or 500 or 1,000. Those are not movie numbers. Studio execs are looking for books which have sold through the roof. That's what they want, because it means there's an existing fan base that they can tap into. It means there is less risk for them to make a movie because they know people already like this type of story. And that's why you need to check your BookScan numbers. BookScan is sort of the gold standard in the literary circles for knowing how many copies a book has moved. The trouble with BookScan is that they don't count every single copy that's sold. Sometimes it might only count 60 to 80% of the actual numbers that you've sold. But that doesn't matter. Like, if you want the gold standard, BookScan is what all the studio execs check to know, oh, is this the type of book that we could make into a movie? Eddie Gamara, who is the VP for Paramount, said that book sales really do matter, and that's why they always check the BookScan numbers. We want to know the thing is going to become a success, on the path to being a success, or it's already successful. Now, you don't have to pay for a BookScan subscription. Amazon does give you access to what BookScan numbers are, so I would recommend checking that and just seeing, okay, what would an outsider see when they look at my BookScan numbers? So you might say, oh, I've sold 4,000 books, but then you look at BookScan and you're like, that says I've only sold 1,500 or 2,000. That's what an outsider is going to see about your book. Let's look at a case study right now, The Martian by Andy Weir. And I'm going to walk you through the stages of how he took his book all the way from being self-published into made it to the movie with Matt Damon. He actually initially posted it for free on a blog, didn't even put it on Amazon or KDP. He was just sort of doing market testing and see how people reacted to his story. Then he ended up posting it to KDP officially as a book for 99 cents in 2012. Now here's the key. He sold 35,000 copies. Sales matter. You have to move copies of the book. I don't care about the price point. It doesn't matter whether it's 99 cents or not. 35,000 copies is a lot. And please very carefully note this next step. An agent contacted him. He did not contact the agent. It is extremely difficult for you to reach out as a self-published author to an agent and be like, oh yeah, I have a self-published book. Do you want to represent me to the big 5? No, 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 no. If your sales are good enough, they come to you. So he sold his book to Crown, which is a publishing imprint of Penguin Random House. It soon sold 1 million copies. And after that is when Hollywood came knocking. It's really the sales of 1 million copies that enabled the movie to be sold. So you have to focus on book sales. Now, a little warning about this route, a little dose of reality and hard talk. Going from self-publishing to made into a movie is like winning the lottery. It's a 1 in a million chance. For every 50 Shades of Grey and Legally Blonde, there are 1 million self-published books that never make it to traditional publishing or into a movie. But like it says in Dumb and Dumber, so you're saying there's a chance. You can keep your hopes alive, you can keep dreaming, that's perfectly fine. The 4th step into making sure your book has the best chance of becoming a movie is finding the right literary agent. First of all, you absolutely need a literary agent to represent you. Nobody gets a movie made without a literary agent opening doors for them, drawing up contracts, shaking hands with people that they know. And so if you're going the traditional publishing route rather than self-publishing route and you're looking for a literary agent, you want to look at their track record. Have they sold any movie rights before? What's been their rights record? What sort of books have they had that they've been able to successfully turn into movies? But little dirty secret here, probably most literary agents haven't had a book they've represented be turned into a film. What you want to look at is their agency. Is there one dedicated person at their agency whose job it is to be the liaison between the literary industry and Hollywood? Because even if your literary agent can't do it, what they do is they go to that person and say, hey, I got a book, can you represent it? And sort of shop it around to your people and see if anyone in Hollywood wants to bite. That's called an in-house media rights person. And that means you just want to check, does the literary agency that your literary agent is with, do they have that type of person? And even if they don't have an in-house media rights person, do they have relationships with out-of-house people? These are usually called co-agents in the industry. They're not exactly working for the literary agency, but they have this sort of relationship where sometimes they collaborate. And by the way, if you want to know how to find out all this information, just get a subscription to Publishers Marketplace. You can look up all this type of stuff, figure out the type of deals that every single literary agent is representing. And you can look back in time and see, oh, have they sold any film rights? Now, the other option other than getting a literary agent is to get a literary manager. A literary manager is very different than a literary agent. Literary manager is usually more based in Hollywood, and they're more concerned with getting rights of books made into movies. Another term to search for is book-to-screen agent. Now, usually you would get a literary agent, and that literary agent would find you the literary manager so that they're both kind of working for you, and the literary manager is the one that actually takes your book the whole way and makes it from book to screen. The 5th way to give your book the best chance of becoming a movie is happenstance. I know this is sort of a cop-out, like it sounds like I'm saying like, well, it might happen or it might not. But there are all sorts of stories of really random ways that movies movie execs found out about a book and then it ended up becoming a movie. I don't know whether you guys remember the movie Infinite with Mark Wahlberg. It's basically about these reincarnation warriors. It's this group of people who remember they have past lives and they're fighting against these nihilists. This is a movie that came from a self-published book. The book is called The Reincarnation Papers by D. Eric Makrans. So this book was self-published in 2009, and Eric wrote in the inside cover of several books, hey, if anybody finds this book and can help me make it into a movie, I will get you a cut of the proceeds. And then he left these books all over the place in East Asia. So there was this producer who was traveling through Nepal, and he stopped at a hotel and he picked up this book and he saw the note inside. He thought, that's a funny note. And then he started reading it and he's like, this book's really good. I think I could make this into a movie. And then he brought the story to another producer who agreed with him, and they hired a screenwriter and they got a director on board, and all of a sudden, boom, it became a movie. Except it wasn't just like that. It actually took 10 years between when he found that book and when the movie actually came out. And it was a super bumpy road. Like, the project originally got shelved before they finally brought it out of mothballs and got it working again, because the original studio exec got fired who had bought it, and the next person on board didn't know anything about it, and then years later found it and was like, oh yeah, I guess we should make that. And then the lead actor got fired, which almost wrecked the movie. It was going to be Chris Evans, and then Mark Wahlberg took his place. So guess what? You can't engineer something like that. I mean, I guess you could write little notes in the front of your book and leave them all over Nepal and Thailand, but you can't plan for something like that. It's happenstance. You can give your book the best shot by setting up everything, but sometimes it's gonna happen or it's not gonna happen. So there's one very important question that I have to answer before I finish this video. Should you aim for trying to make your book into a movie? And I'm going to tell you a firm no. Instead, you should focus on those steps I outlined, right? All of those are great steps. You should focus on getting fantastic publicity. You should focus on selling the most amount of copies that you possibly can. You should focus on trying to get the right literary agent for your book. Ultimately, you should focus on making the best book possible, because ultimately that is what's going to give you the best chance of getting your book made into a movie.